As I was thinking what to do for this week's episode, I was just trying to think through it. The only big news to come out recently is RFK, well, at least at the time that I'm filming this, which is the Friday before it'll be released on Monday. This is the time I'm filming it. And the only big news which came out today is that RFK Jr. is dropping out of the race and endorsing Trump. And that's big news and all. But will it really swing the election to one candidate or the other? Probably not. It definitely helps Trump. But I put out a YouTube short about it, and I felt like in 60 seconds I said everything that needed to be said. So I was trying to decide, what do I do? There's going to be plenty of analysis on the RFK Jr. thing. I don't need to throw in my 2 cents beyond what I did in the YouTube short. So I decided to come back to this video idea that I've had kind of stored away for a while, and that is I'm going to take a political compass test. This is not the famous one from the politicalcompasstest.org or whatever that website's called. This is one from Pew Research Center. It's a little bit shorter, and I think the questions are going to be a little bit more practical. And so I think it's going to be interesting to find out how accurate is this computer, is Pew's, political compass generator, political typology, I think is what they call it on the website. How accurately does it describe me? Because if you watch the episode, you know I'm about as far right, quote unquote, aka normal, as it gets. So let's find out just how accurate Pew Research is.
America is no longer one nation under God. Are you ready to fight for revival? Well, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Fight and Revive with Adam Boyer.
As you may have noticed, the actual boom mic, podcast mic, whatever you want to call it, I guess I got a boom arm here, is not in the video today. Well, it is now, but here it is. So, cameo appearance for the good old podcast microphone, but it's not going to be staying with me today. I'm missing a piece of equipment for at the moment. It should be back next time I film an episode, but for today we're back to the handy dandy, trusty, and faithful lapel mic. Okay, with that out of the way, because I know you definitely cared about that, let's get into it. The political typology quiz from pewresearch.org. Where do you fit in the political typology? Are you a faith and flag conservative, progressive left, or somewhere in between? And take our quiz, etc., etc. Okay, let's start this quiz. I believe it's 16 questions? Yes, 16 questions. Okay. First one. If you had to choose, would you rather have a smaller government providing fewer services or a bigger government providing more services? Well, I think that's a very obvious answer. The federal government, as it was originally intended by the founders, and I know they were just a bunch of old fuddy-duddies, and who cares what they say anyway. But if we were to, abide by how the Constitution, as laid out by the founding fathers, has the federal government supposed to operate, then yes, the constitutional answer here is a smaller government providing fewer services. Also, the more practical answer. The more involved the federal government is in its citizens' lives, the worse those citizens' lives is. Which of the following statements come closest to your view? I should point out, by the way, I don't know what's coming on this political quiz. I've not ever looked at this. I've not taken it. I think I've taken the politicalcompass.org's test once or twice, but I've never taken Pew's. So I'm seeing these questions for the first time, just for the record. So you're getting my real, raw, unfiltered thoughts. And reaction, I should say. Which of the following statements come closest to your view? America's openness to people from all over the world is essential to who we are as a nation. If America is too open to people from all over the world, we risk losing our identity as a nation. Which of the following statements come closest to your view? So obviously I know what they want you to say. You pick the first one, you're supposed to be a liberal. If you pick the second one, you're supposed to be a conservative. There's a measure of truth to number one. America's openness to people from all over the world is essential to who we are as a nation. Take the Irish immigrants or the Italian immigrants in New York. You think Ellis Island in the earlier 1900s especially. The first statement is true, but in this day and age especially, that America is no longer a young nation in terms of, like, we're not still... I don't want to say we're not innovating to the same effect. We're not having constant breakthroughs. The country's not growing. We're not still pushing westward. In that sense, America's not still it's not in that same time period. We're a very well-established country now and the global superpower. That's the closest I can get to kind of explain how I'm thinking. So even though I know that's what they want me to pick, I'm going to pick option 2 because right now, for this current day and age, it's true. I think it comes closest to my view. If America is too open to people from all over the world, we risk losing our identity as a nation. I think option 2 is correct, but option 1 has a measure of truth as well. In general, would you say experts who study a subject for many years are usually better at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people? Usually worse, same thing, neither better nor worse at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people. Again, I know how they want me to answer this, but experts that study a subject for many years, that's very true. I mean, you take a guy like Thomas J. DiLorenzo in history and economics, or Thomas Sowell in economics, or all sorts of people that really do study their field. Yeah, they have a very good understanding of that field, and they should be better at making those policy decisions about the subject. So you have I'm trying to think of an example. A gunsmith, a gun manufacturer, should be very good, although that might be a little bit of a faulty example, at making Second Amendment decisions. That one's not quite as hard. I'm trying to think one who studies the founders' own writings and ideas and the prevailing opinions of the day, and going throughout history, both the Bible and old writings of what the founders thought about freedom of speech, should be better equipped at making good policy decisions about the First Amendment, for example. So, yes, I know what they're thinking is like the conservatives just going to say, yeah, them Harvard grads, they don't know what they're talking about, and that's true. But if studied correctly, then it's true that usually the people who are experts, real experts on a subject, are better at making good policy decisions about the subject than other people. In the same way that someone who works at NASA building rockets is going to have a lot better idea of what the mechanics are of working, what the mechanics are of getting a guy to the moon are than I do. I wouldn't have the first idea. I don't understand how any of that works. So, but if the guy went to NASA and the whole time he's been, a janitor, it's not just the fact that he was there. If he has to actually be studying that subject. So, just because someone is better at a subject, supposedly, with the type of learning they're getting in public schools, colleges today, that doesn't necessarily mean because they've studied the subject that they actually understand the subject. Again, revised history is so false, it's completely false these days, that someone who studied what the founders supposedly said and believed may not actually have any idea what they actually said and believed. I hope I'm being somewhat clear of that. So, all that to say, I'm picking option one. They are usually better at making good policy decisions about that subject than other people. Question 4. Thinking about increased trade of goods and services between the U.S. and other nations in recent decades, would you say that the U.S. has gained more than it lost because increased trade has helped lower prices and increase the competitiveness of some U.S. businesses? Lost more than it has gained because increased trade has cost jobs in manufacturing and other industries and lowered wages for some U.S. workers. So basically, if I understand this correctly, it's basically, do you like the idea of tariffs? When you go to the store, do you prefer to buy something that's made in China for $1.99 or something that's made in America for $2.99? I think generally I do lean on the side of America's lost more than it gained because of increased trade. That's not to say I don't like the idea of open trade with other countries. We obviously have to some, but it has gotten out of control, and that's why I do like some of Trump's ideas about tariffs. Specifically on the Chinese, we're trying to promote American manufacturing. So I think I generally lean toward option 2. Question 5. How much more, if anything, needs to be done to ensure equal rights for all Americans regardless of their racial or ethnic backgrounds? Well, it's tempting to say a lot by virtue of the fact that there's a lot of racial hatred in America, but most of it is to white people. That's just a fact. I'm not saying white people are oppressed. I don't think we are. I don't think black people are oppressed, or Asians or Hispanics or anyone else in this country. This country is still, to an extent, maybe not in the same sense Ronald Reagan said it, but it's still the city on a hill, and that anyone can come here and succeed regardless of your racial or ethnic background. So while there is obviously some real racism, there's real racism in every country. You can't eradicate racism. That's just part of human fallenness. It's not as widespread as it is in many countries and cultures historically, and a lot of it's anti-whiteism. That's just a fact. Anti-whiteism, short for anti-white racism. So I would say a little. I don't think a lot needs to be done. I don't think nothing at all needs to be done. There's always something that needs to be done. Again, you're never going to eradicate racism from blacks to whites or whites to black or any other racial group, but so there's always some room to improve. But in terms of is America this oppressive, oppressive plantation where a poor black folk just can't get ahead. Obviously not. For any other racial group for that matter. So a little. Which of the following statements come closest to your view? Business corporations make too much profit. Most corporations make a fair and reasonable amount of profit. Obviously, number 2, the big corporations like Walmart provide a service and products people want. People come and buy the products. There you go. I'm not saying we need to have monopolies, but I'm also not saying, but basically, do you think businesses need to be taxed higher is where this is going, and the answer is no. Most corporations make a fair and reasonable amount of profit. They're not generally going to consistently make more than what the free market perceives them as being worth. How much, if at all, would it bother you to regularly hear people speak a language other than English in public places in your community? Regularly hear people speak a language. So, I guess that's what it's saying is a lot of people speaking a different language consistently. So, basically, if I go to that same Walmart and I hear half the people in there are talking Spanish and another 10% of them are talking Mandarin Chinese and another 10% are talking, Russian or something, I guess that's not as much of an issue, but you know what I mean. Just as an example, it would bother me. So I think I'll say a lot. Again, I know where this is going. It would bother me a lot, but did I say only because it's further erosion of the American culture. It's not the languages themselves. I do speak a little Mandarin Chinese. You probably would not think that by looking at me. I speak a couple words of Spanish, and I actually can speak a few sentences in Mandarin Chinese, we'll say. But so I have nothing against those languages, particularly. It's just this is America, and English is the national language, or at least it should be. On a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 means you feel as cold and negative as possible, and 100 means you feel as warm and positive as possible, how do you feel toward Democrats? That's a 0 because they are literal communists. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, their face is just staring at me in my head now as I think of them. And Kamala's cackle is now stuck in my head, so that's fun. How do you feel toward Democrats? 0. Democrats, aka communists, all the same thing. How do you feel toward Republicans? Not a whole lot better, if we're being honest. Republicans are like Democrats. Basically, they're just Democrats going the speed limit. They're Democrats, but 5 years behind. How do you feel toward Republicans right now, especially during this election cycle? Maybe a 40. Not very high. Question 9 of 16. Which of these statements best describes your opinion about the U.S.? The U.S. stands above all other countries in the world. The U.S. is one of the greatest countries in the world, along with some others. There are other countries that are better than the U.S. For now, at least, the U.S. still stands above all other countries in the world. How much, if any, would you say each of the following are in the how much of a problem, if any, would you say each of the following are in the country today? People being too easily offended by things others say is a problem, and it's too widespread, but I wouldn't say it's a major problem per se in terms of if it doesn't change, that's not what's going to directly lead to the collapse of America. So minor problem. It's not a problem, but it's a minor problem. People saying things that are very offensive to others. Again, same thinking. It's a minor problem. I'm not going to go too deep into that. Question 11 of 16. Which comes closer to your view of candidates for political office, even if neither is exactly right? I usually feel like there is at least one candidate who shares most of my views. None of the candidates represent my views well. Usually there is at least one candidate who shares most of my views. This year, not so much. I'm in Virginia in our 5th Congressional District. I have a Rhino Republican who is our nominee. He kicked out, with the help of Kevin McCarthy and Donald Trump, he kicked out conservative Congressman Bob Good in the primary. He's now our Republican nominee for the district. Our Senate candidate, Hung Cao, a Vietnamese guy, ran for Congress in the 9th or 10th, I believe, a couple years ago. Seems to be decent from everything I can tell, but he's not going to beat Tim Kaine, unfortunately. It's just not going to happen, just looking at it from a strictly real perspective. And then Trump, I've gotten my feelings on Trump many times on the show. I feel like I've talked about him enough. I'm not going to talk about it anymore right now. But generally, there's at least one candidate who shares most of my views. Candidate. Need to speak clearly here. In general, how much do white people benefit from advantages in society that black people do not have? Not at all. You can disagree with that. I already talked about this earlier with the racial question earlier. I'm not going to dive deeper into that right now. Everyone has a fair shot in America. It's just a fact. Do you think greater social acceptance of people who are transgender, people who identify as a gender that is different from the sex they were assigned at birth, is very good for society, somewhat good, neither good nor bad, somewhat bad, very bad for society, completely unbiblical, and is one of the things that is most quickly accelerating America's demise and downfall? And I think, it's destroyed a lot of churches, I think, that and issues like it. It's openly flaunting perversion and sin. That's the problem. It's not because I hate transgender people or the fact that a guy wants to wear a dress that makes me annoyed. That's not the problem. Yeah, I mean, in years past, yes, everyone would have realized that was a problem, and they don't now. But my main problem is not that I don't like it. It's that, and you're going to think this sounds cliche and corny, but I'm serious. It's that God doesn't like it. That, as a Christian, is my standard for what is right and what is wrong. What does God say is right and wrong? And the Bible is abundantly clear that that is wrong. See Romans 1. It's very bad for society, greater social acceptance of those people. Overall, would you say people who are convicted of crimes in this country serve too much time in prison, too little time in prison, about the right time? About the right amount. Definitely too little time. Question 15 of 16. Which of the following statements comes closest to your view? Religion should be kept separate from government policies. Government policies should support religious values and beliefs. Religion cannot be kept from separate from government policies, because ultimately all laws are religious in nature, and that all laws appeal to a higher authority fundamentally, thereby insinuating a religion. Now, it depends on generally what people think of religion is they think if you're inside the church or you're inside the synagogue or the cathedral and you're worshiping. That's what people generally think of as religion. Religion can't actually be kept separate from government. It's just not possible. Government policies should support religious values and beliefs in as much as they should not be interfering with religion. Keep in mind the First Amendment was written to keep government out of religion, not to keep religion out of government, because again, that's not possible, and that's something the founders understood. That is another thing we could delve deeper into sometime, and probably should. Michael Knowles, now, he's a Catholic. I am as I mentioned before, a Baptist. I believe I mentioned before, I'm a Baptist. So we disagree on some stuff, but Knowles, in terms of that, his opinions of religion and government are very solid. You could listen to more from him on it. Government policies should support religious values and beliefs. Question 16 of 16, last one. In the future, do you think U.S. policy should try to keep it so America is the only military superpower? It would be acceptable if another country became as militarily powerful as the U.S. Man, this one's going to make me think. So, it would be acceptable if another country became as militarily powerful as the U.S. It would be acceptable, yes. Would it be ideal? No. I would like America to remain the world superpower unchallenged. For example, I think we still are the most militarily powerful now, but I think China is a close second. I think U.S. and China are by far ahead the most. I think before the war, you could have made the argument that Russia was number 3. I'm not sure you can now. They seem to be weakened. I don't really follow the Ukraine-Russia war. I haven't in several years now, in as much as I ever did. So, all that to say, it would be acceptable, yes, in terms of just because someone's more as militarily powerful as militarily powerful as us doesn't mean we're going to go nuke them, but it's not ideal. U.S. policy should try to keep it so America's the only military superpower. That's true, yes, and again, I don't love the way they're phrasing these questions because that's true. We should try to keep it so America is the only military superpower in my mind, but that does not mean getting involved in every foreign war that we see. And I'm not an isolationist. I don't believe there's a situation where the U.S. can never get involved in a foreign war. I think most of the foreign wars we're involved in are unnecessary and not helpful. So I think U.S. policy should try to keep it so America is the only military superpower is generally the statement I would agree with, but again, probably not in the same way that their calculator is going to use to determine my political ideology, but I'm going to use that answer here. Okay, submit. Processing, here we go. Your best fit is faith and flag conservatives, along with 10% of the public. So the progressive left was the furthest left. Faith and flag conservative was all the way to the right. And I'll tell you what, I did not think I was going to, based on some of those questions, the way they were phrasing them in my answers, I thought I was maybe going to throw them off a little bit. I did not. Here we go. 1% of the general public who are progressive left, 6%, faith and flag conservatives, 10%, committed conservatives, 7%, populist right, 11%, ambivalent right, 12%, stressed sideliners, 15%, outsider left 10, Democratic mainstays 16, establishment liberals 13. Very, very interesting results. I think it's very accurate. I'd say I'm pretty much as far to the right on this scale as you can get. I promise you the most conservative commentary online when you watch the channel, so I do my best to deliver that in any way I can. So, with that said, what do you think? I just gave a lot of controversial answers, and I'd be interested to hear where y'all think I'm wrong and where you agree with me. If you want to throw a little positivity in the comment section, please feel free. But where you think I'm wrong, excuse me, where you think I'm wrong and why, and do you agree? Do I deserve my far right rating? Am I really a faith and flag conservative? I would say so. I've tried to deliver the most conservative commentary online. Hope I'm doing a really good job of that. So, I don't have an outro set. I don't have anything else to say. I've heard it said that a wise man once said, when you don't have anything else helpful to say, shut up. So, I'm going to do that now. In the words of our great president, look here, Jack. I'll challenge you to push-ups, but that's neither here nor there. Don't forget to subscribe to the Fight and Revive YouTube channel and help us reach more people with our conservative message.